Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark. I'm happy to be back with you again for another edition of Leadership Conversations. This is the place and platform where we explore the application of leadership within the world that matters to you. I'm happy to be joined by my friends and colleagues, Dr. Philip Foster and Dr. Latanya Hughes. And today we're going to be talking about procrastination. Now, that is a hot topic because a lot of people procrastinate and don't admit to it. But there was an article that was recently published that talked about the benefits of procrastination and how it adds benefits to one's leadership. So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we get started, wanted to allow my friends to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive right into the topic of procrastination and creativity. Philip, you want to go first?
Sure. Dr. Foster with Maximum Change Consulting out of Cincinnati, Ohio. My specialty is in strategy and foresight, and specifically working with large corporations and governments to look 10, 20 years out into the future to predict possible disruptions. You can find me online at MaximumChange.com and follow me on Twitter at MaximumChange.
Great. Latanya.
Good morning. I am Dr. Latanya Hughes. I specialize in leadership, specifically leadership as a lifestyle. I really particularly work with people in government, education, as well as arts and entertainment. So I am actually based out of South Florida in Broward County. So it's kind of cool and windy here, but we love it. I'll take it any day. I'll take it over you guys' weather any day.
It's 45 degrees and getting ready to rain.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I cannot.
Yeah, here in Connecticut it's 28 degrees and it snowed the past couple of days. So go ahead and rub it in, guys.
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's 74 and windy. That's perfect for us.
Sounds like
Awesome.
We're procrastinating.
Well, let's get right into it. You know, the past couple of shows that we've had together, we've talked about a variety of things. And one of the things that I like to do before we get started with any show is really to have a brief conversation about what leadership is. And the reason why I like to cover leadership briefly is because a lot of people have their own definitions of leadership, and oftentimes it's based upon opinions and observations. But I wanted to give a chance to each of us to just talk about what leadership is, and then we can take it from there to talk about procrastination and creativity. So, Latanya, we'll start with you. What is leadership?
As like I always like to say, leadership is a lifestyle. It's not something that you do. It's not a position. It's who you are. It's your character. It's everything that embodies who you are. And at the heart of leadership is the individual's personal values and their code of ethics. So for me, I always see leadership as a lifestyle. It's your character. It's how you what makes the core of who you are when it comes to your values and your personal code of ethics. So to me, that's what leadership is.
Cool. Philip?
I think mine always changes every time we meet, but in essence, leadership to me is not a position. It's not a rank. It is the ability to bring people alongside of you on a journey to a destination that's been predetermined by a group of people. So leadership to me is all about empowering individuals and mentoring and coaching them to be better and more focused on a goal. To me, it's more about process rather than destination.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think, one of the things we all agree to is that leadership is a process. I think we all would agree that leadership is learned. No one is born with it. And, the idea that you are born with leadership skills or qualities has probably been debunked for quite a while now. So for those of you who fear that you have not yet blossomed into your leadership, I think there's hope, because leadership is a process, as has been stated. And I certainly believe that leadership is the process of connecting people to a common goal, influencing them by whatever means that is necessary. And with that foundation laid, I really want to jump into this conversation about procrastination and creativity. Now, the article we're talking about was written in the fortune.com website, and it really talks about leadership or creativity is really at its best when when it comes to the last minute. And ultimately, we're going to summarize that into procrastination. A lot of people do not have positive thoughts when it comes to procrastination, but I wanted to kind of dive into the conversation And the first question I want to ask you guys is, do good leaders do things at the last minute? And I think that's a very important question because a lot of people have a lot of criticisms about leaders who do things at the last minute. Is that true? Do good leaders do things at the last minute?
I don't know. I don't know if that's really a cut and dry question. And I'll say, and the reason I say that is because, in my opinion, good leaders are planners. However, you leave room for flexibility. There are going to be times where you have to think on the fly because it's just like driving. Sometimes you have to drive for other people because they don't know what they're doing.
Come on now.
It's the same situation when it comes to leadership. When you're working with someone who you know is a chronic procrastinator, and it could be not because it could be a cultural thing, and I don't want to get too far off of that, but it could be a cultural thing with them to be chronically late or to be chronically, always constantly doing things at the last minute. So if I know I'm working with someone like that, and it's possibly going to affect what I have to do or affect my timeline or my schedule, I allow room for that in my particular schedule because I know that I may have to pick up the slack. I may have to step up to the plate for this particular person. So it may be a cultural issue. It may be something that they don't realize. It may be something that they need to be coached on. But some people, now and then there are some people I've worked with who they are at their best when they're at the last minute. So it really just depends on the individual. So I can't really say that it's a cut and dry answer because I've seen both ends of the spectrum where there's some people you can give them a schedule and they can plan ahead and you can have it lined out for them, but the quality of work is not there. But at the last minute, it's like an adrenaline rush. They work better under adrenaline that comes with procrastinating versus, okay, I'm going to work on a schedule and I'm going to put it down here on my calendar. And this is what I'm going to do on my to-do list. Some people are organized and they work better that way versus some people they put out their best work when they procrastinate. So it just really depends on the individual.
Mm.
So I kind of had a mental wrestling match with this idea. I don't know the author of the Fortune article, so I can't speak for him in any way. But here's where I'm struggling. As a business coach, as a leadership coach, a lot of times I have clients coming to me and saying, I need help overcoming procrastination. And so they recognize it from a negative standpoint. Now, I realize this article is written from the positive. So here's where I wrestle with it. Most of what I understand about procrastination from a psychological standpoint is that it's rooted and based in some area of fear. Fear of not being able to produce the product, fear of maybe not being good enough, fear of being too old, too young. There's some sort of fear wrapped in procrastination. Now, I'm talking from the negative sense because I have clients come to me and ask me to overcome this. So I'm usually digging or drilling for what is holding them back. What is the fear? Now, there are some people that are adrenaline junkies and like to wait till last minute. Perhaps we shouldn't call that procrastination. We should call it something else. From my standpoint, I really struggle with this idea of procrastination being a good thing. If you're going to call it its true thing, procrastination, it's to be slow or put off doing something that should be done. And so why are we doing that? So anyhow, I probably didn't answer the question, but that's what I'm wrestling with.
So let's kind of dig in a little more. Procrastination is defined as putting off something or delaying something that requires immediate attention. Right. Now, what's getting me in that definition is the immediate attention part, because typically when I've encountered procrastination or people have talked about procrastination, it did not include the immediate attention piece. It might have included people delaying action for a period of time until a defined period of time, whereas they may have been able to get it done way earlier. What's your reaction to that definition? Do you agree that it's only associated with things that require immediate attention, or does procrastination happen or occur in a variety of instances where people intentionally delay action, decisions, thinking, conversations, etc.?
Well, for me, I mean, I'll take it one step forward. It's to be slow or late about doing something that should be done. And that was another definition I looked up today. So, I probably would fall into the realm of procrastination deals with the more immediate. And I'm not meaning necessarily in the next 5 minutes, but maybe today. So it is in the immediate sense. So, and by the way, Dr. Bolzer sent me a message saying she's having internet trouble. That's why she's not here yet. She's not procrastinating. So, but the immediateness of it, I think, probably puts it into a better context of what we're dealing with. And that's why I think what the author's talking about is really maybe not procrastination. And I'll get into that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I agree with you, Dr. Foster, and Dr. Clark. I think that this particular article, the author isn't really talking about procrastination, because I'm looking at some of the examples. For example, he's talking about how some of the greatest speeches in history were rewritten at the last minute. Rewritten is not the same as procrastinating, because that means that there was already a plan in place, like I said earlier, and it was changed. That's not procrastination. Procrastination is, you have something that you need to do.
Yep.
And you just keep putting off and putting it off and putting it, and you just kind of come right on the cusp. Like, if I know I have something to do and I have a deadline of this Friday, and I don't work on it until it's due on Friday, and it's due at 5 on Friday, and it's 12 o'clock, and I still haven't done anything until 12 to like 1 o'clock, I start working on something that's due at 5. That's procrastination. It's not, it's not going back over something that's already been put in place, and I'm just kind of tweaking. There's a difference. So I think there is a misunderstanding or a misconception of what procrastination really is. So I think that by really talking about the definition of procrastination and getting a better handle on it, we can understand what it is and what it is not. And then we can start helping people in the leadership community and surrounding the leadership community, help others who struggle with this with this issue of procrastination, because what procrastination is to me is not what procrastination is to the next person. And that's clearly what we see here in this particular article.
What's interesting, and I think you were kind of pushing on this, Latanya, is that if I have a plan and I intentionally design an activity to begin at the very last minute, that may not be considered procrastination to me because of the preceding tasks that I have to accomplish prior to that. Now, depending on how you're looking at it, you may be looking on the outside in and determine, yeah, you're procrastinating, William, because you waited at the last minute. But here's the nuance to that. You don't know, typically, if you're making a judgment call, you don't know the elements that I'm dealing with prior to that one task that I'm putting off at the last minute. You don't know if I'm working by myself. You don't know if I'm dependent upon other team members. You don't know if there's lead time that I'm counting on that got reduced because of circumstances outside of my control. Or the other thing I wanted to put forward, and I think you're hitting on this, that this may not be procrastination, because of the nature of my creative genius, I may not want to think about something excessively because I am too creative to allow myself to be open to too much time. Too much time may give me too many ideas. And I find that if I want to get down to the nitty gritty and want to focus on one idea, it's best for the project, it's best for the task, it's best for the team that I not think about this until the last minute, because you'll get the best idea at that moment so that we can move forward.
Well, I think that's a great point, especially if you're dealing with someone who deals with ADD or ADHD, because you have to deal with the person's natural personality. I want to go back to something that Dr. Hughes was talking about, and really it's on the cusp of fear that I was speaking of earlier. And I think that the problem with procrastination can be when you do wait till the end of the day or at the last moment. If you're dealing with it from a fear perspective, it's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts, because you're saying, I don't know how to do this. I'm not going to be able to, whatever the negative neuralistic, data you're giving yourself, telling yourself you can't and why you can't, you're giving yourself permission to be late about it. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's a bigger problem that we as leaders have to deal with, and that is if you know someone who is either ADD, ADHD, or they are legitimately fearful of the project, or they're a natural procrastinator, then you need to build in space or bandwidth for that person. So what I find, and I hope none of my family listens to this, I have certain people in my life that I have to tell them, we're going to begin at 5:00, and they don't show up till 6:00. Guess what? The party really starts at 6, but I told them it starts at 5 because I'm having to manage them in a certain way. So I do think, though, if we go to what the article's talking about, and I think this pushes toward what you're saying, Dr. Clark, we really need to build in space or bandwidth in our lives to quiet our mind, or maybe quiet our space around us, so that we can focus on what needs to be creatively accomplished. So I think really that's what the article is about, is creating bandwidth or space for quietness so that we can think or activate that creativity.
Why do you think people avoid creating the bandwidth on behalf of other people? I mean, that's a fascinating topic, because, I like to think that as a leader, as we talked about, it's a process. It's about engagement and getting people on board. And as a leader, you're constantly thinking about the right now and the tomorrow. And in thinking about the tomorrow, you're constantly trying to figure out how to put your people in the best position to win. So why is it challenging for some people to create bandwidth for those people that they're leading? And there's probably an easy answer to that, but I'll throw it out there anyway.
I think it varies. There may be the people who feel like, I'm not about to babysit you. So there's the leader who will tell you, I'm not your mama, I'm not your daddy, I'm not gonna babysit you. So in that instance, you kind of take the perspective of, you're an adult, you're responsible for managing your own time. I've got all this other stuff that I have to do, and you're not the only person that I have to manage or lead. Then there's the person who has the "that's not my job" mentality. So it may be a coworker, or a colleague who may say, "That's not my job." So they'll have the "I don't get paid enough" attitude, and all this other kind of stuff. And then there's the person who feels like, okay, I'll help you to the extent that you want to help yourself, but I'm not going to be a handicap or a crutch for you. So at some point you've got to get better. So I believe it depends on the personality of the person, the position that they take, the perspective they take upon it. And then you have those who are going to be those mother figures, whether they're the leader or the manager or not. They're going to be the one that will say, I'm going to work with you. Some people's patience is not long. There was a point where I could tell you real quick, my patience was very short. It was not long, because I don't have time for the foolishness. But as you grow and you mature and you realize that there are some people who need more than others, and then there are those who will take, you've got to kind of do some time with them because someone did some time with you to help improve you. So it's all about, I believe in giving and doing for other people to get back some of the same things. So if I want people to be patient with me, I've got to be patient with them. But it took some time to mature to that point. So I really believe it has everything to do with the person, their personality, their patience level. Because I can't stand procrastination. I used to be a procrastinator, so I know now I really can't stand it. And I realized how it affected other people. And then once I realized how it affected other people, it really made me feel bad about the fact that I didn't honor the other person's time. Because really that's what it boils down to, is whether or not you are honoring other people's time and what they have to do, because what you have to do is not any more important than the next person's. And when you're working on a group project, that's even worse, because now I'm irritated because I'm waiting on you to do your part, or the whole team is waiting on this one part and we can't finish. And so we're just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. And so it just really becomes a point of, how are you honoring everyone else who's impacted or affected by your decision to be a procrastinator?
I just tweeted one thing you said, Philip, before you go. And hey, Dr. Bolster, how are you? You said, Latanya, that is your leader willing to do time with you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the obvious reference is, incarceration. And when you are stuck in jail, right? You're doing time. And I think that's such a huge,
Right.
I think, feather in the cap when you have a leader who's willing to do time with you. They're willing to get in the trenches, get down and dirty with you so that they can help build your bandwidth. I mean, ultimately, that suggests your leader really cares about your development and that they are really good at what they're doing.
Right.
Good morning, Dr. Bolzer.
Good morning.
So glad you're with us. To answer your question, I think part of the reason why we don't create mental space or bandwidth or time in our daily budget, if you will, is because we don't know how. And I just posted a link in our live chat area. There are a lot of books out there on time management, and one of them that I have found successful for me has been David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. And that's been around for a while, and it actually uses some techniques that have been around probably 40 years or so. But the other thing is people don't know how to use calendars, whether it be digital or I use this basics book that's got a calendar in it and a place for notes. And there's tools, but we don't use those tools, whether they be manual or digital. And I think that's part of how we don't create that space. For me, when I'm clicking along, like right now, today I'm full of meetings and I'm not writing, but tomorrow I'll be writing a little bit. I actually build in time to think, to ponder, to read, and to write. And reading is important, and pondering is important, and thinking is important for my writing process. So that's my creativity right there. So I'm actually building that in with purpose. And I think that a lot of the problem is we don't mentor and coach our followers on how to do that well enough. And I think this is a bigger problem. We ourselves as leaders don't necessarily model it very well.
Okay. So let me just dive in there, and Karen, jump in whenever you feel the opportunity. Philip, you talked about using tools to create bandwidth. What tools are you guys using today to help manage bandwidth? And I can start with that right now. I probably shared this in a previous conversation. I'm using Asana. It's a project management tool. Between Asana and my calendar, it is the very tools that I really use to make sure I am managing bandwidth as much as possible with my team members.
I'm old school, so I just use a calendar. But I think because way back, I had mentors who taught me the art of using a calendar. When I first started with Marriott, we were under the Franklin Covey mindset. Everything was Covey. And so when you learn the Covey way, there's no other way, at least for me, because it's indoctrinated in you. It works. And so I'm of the old school Franklin Covey calendar way. And I've always along the way, I've learned to tweak my schedule based on the people that I'm working with. So I know some people need an extra 10-15 minutes. So if I have an appointment with a particular person, I'm going to build in 10 or 15 minutes with that person, whether it's on the front end or the back end. I don't overbook. I don't book anything back to back, so I learn certain things. And recently what I've been doing is I've been adding a timer. So even when I'm on my to-do list or certain things I have to do, I set my timer. And when that timer goes off, that's it. So I'm not spending more than 2 hours on social media, or I'm not, on my marketing. I'm not spending more than an hour on writing an article or a blog. I'm not spending. So this way I'm maximizing my day, and I'm still making sure I get everything I need to get done. So I have my calendar, I have my to-do list, and I have my timer, and that keeps me focused. It keeps me on track. And at the same time, I'm still building in that space or bandwidth for creativity. I'm still building in that space that Dr. Foster was talking about for other people, so that I can be flexible and not frustrated by other people's lack of time management. So it's a way for me to manage other people's time at the same time while I'm managing my own time.
Now I use Microsoft Outlook calendar. And I struggle with this because I have appointments literally back to back to back. That's just the way my secretary builds my schedule. However, I find myself at the end of the day not accomplishing some task on the calendar because of constant interruptions. throughout the day. And I'm a very task oriented person anyway. So it frustrates me when I look at my calendar and I have 4 things done out of 10. So I've had to learn how to be flexible and how to prioritize and make sure just because I have a calendar doesn't mean that it's set in stone. Another issue that I deal with on my job is, you're right, procrastination. I have someone who's supposed to come in to meet with me at 10:30 and they come in at 10:50. And that totally just blows my whole schedule. So as a leader, what do we do about things like that? My thing is, if you're 5-10 minutes late, we have to reschedule an appointment.
I was going to say, Karen, that's an awesome point you made. Boundaries. When it comes to procrastination, I think there's a time where you have to establish boundaries. I will give you one. That's it. Because after a while, it becomes a pattern of behavior. Now I'm responsible for not allowing you to cross that boundary line, because I have boundaries. And if you're not careful, other people will overstep your boundary and their boundaries into your boundaries. And so you have to establish those guidelines for yourself. Okay, I'll allow you 5 or 10 minutes. However, this shouldn't become a pattern of behavior. Don't let this become something that's frequent, because to me, what you're saying now is you don't honor me. And you don't honor my time, and you don't honor the other people who's on my schedule. So if you're not careful, other people will dictate your schedule if you let them. So that's an excellent point that you made, Dr. Bozer, about, just when it comes to people showing up 20 minutes late, anything more than 5 or 10 minutes, you need to reschedule, because now sometimes there has to be penalty involved, because some people will never learn or change a pattern of behavior if there's no penalty involved. It's just like a paper. When turning in a paper late or an assignment late, there's a penalty for turning stuff in late, or even on your job. Why shouldn't there be the same for people who procrastinate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's another issue going on here that I think we ought to address. And, maybe, Karen, you could just count this as a coaching session or something. I think you are not unique. I think that leaders out there struggle with these very things. And what I would say is 2 things. One, you have to empower your assistant, your secretary, whomever that is, that they are the gatekeeper. All good secretaries are gatekeepers. And you have to empower them to say, if someone comes in 5 minutes before the meeting's supposed to end, they're allowed to say, I am so sorry, Dr. Bolzer moved on to something else. Let's go ahead and get you rescheduled and be done with it. And if you have capacity an hour from now, that's great. The other thing is, I would empower your assistant, and I think this speaks to any leader. Empower whomever's helping you, especially if you're not controlling your own calendar. I'd encourage them to say, "Listen, I need 10 minutes between meetings, or I need 30 minutes a day for red time." And I call that red time, meaning all I'm doing is reading, responding to email, or doing something that is helping me to build in capacity in my day to get something done. That could be 30 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be spread out throughout the day. It could be clumped together. That's up to you as the leader. But I would say that from a leadership standpoint, that is a place where you're empowering someone who's controlling part of your life to step in there. Now, to answer the question about the technology I use, I happen to use Google Calendar. And for those who are not Apple or are not Droid fans, but they're Apple fans, there's Apple Calendar. I use Google Calendar. Anyhow, why I use Google Calendar is because it syncs with my smartphone. And so even my wife has access to my calendar, and she can put a note in there or drop something in and say, hey, the kids have a dentist appointment on this day. Don't schedule something during that time because you're going to have to take them. But I also use old school. I use a basic. This is from the Basic company. And the reason why I do this is because when I'm traveling, like if I'm in an airplane or in a place where I don't have access to cell coverage or Wi-Fi, I have at least some information here. I can make notes. I can talk about what I'm going to do next. So I know that's kind of a redundant system, but for me, it works. This stays on my desk right next to me all day long. It stays open, and you can see it's got elastic bands on it. So it stays open. And if I need to deal with something, it's there. But I use my digital calendar all day long. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist for me.
Exactly. I agree. If it's not on my calendar, I have calendars everywhere. I have it on the wall. I have this one that somebody bought me. I have my calendar in my planner, and I use the calendar on my phone. So I have stuff everywhere. And if it's not in any of that, like you said, it doesn't exist. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't exist.
So are there benefits? Go ahead.
Where that was possible. How if it's on my calendar, it exists. If it's not on my calendar, as a leader, I still try to make myself available for those things that pop up just in case. I don't want to be a type of leader that just lives by the calendar. Sorry, you're not on my calendar. I can't talk to you today. Right. And so when I work in the university, I have no way of knowing what students are going to have issues that day who need to see me, what emergencies are going to pop up. So for leaders, I do, yes, calendars and keeping track and setting boundaries is great, but we don't want to become so rigid where we close that open door of communication. Whereas, oh, you're not on my calendar. And I'm not saying anyone's doing this. You're not on my calendar. I can't see you. So I think the hardest part for me as a leader, like Dr. Hughes says, is setting those boundaries and saying, yes, I do want to see you, but my time today just doesn't allow that. So maybe we do need to set up an appointment. So I think my question would be, as a leader, what facets do you think is acceptable to say whether or not, okay, I need to not see you today, or I can see you today? Do you think that's totally up to the leader? Do you think that depends on the situation?
I think it depends.
I'm just being open and honest because
no, I think it depends on the situation. I think it depends on the situation because you can tell whether it's an urgent matter versus, and you also know that again, it boils down to honoring the time that's already. If someone is already scheduled time on your calendar for that day, and you see that this is an urgent situation that's going to overlap into the next person's time, then what you say to that person is, okay, I understand that this is a matter of urgency. What I'm going to do is schedule some time. I'm going to create some time for you to come back so we can talk about it. It might be a telephone conversation, where you can, multitask with something else. And I don't, mean to belittle what someone's situation is, but if you're carving out time to get this person in because it's an urgent matter, that's a different situation because you understand that there's an urgency to it versus it's a shenanigan. This is somebody who has a pattern of behavior always late. They always, they kind of expect to be worked in. They kind of expect to be seen. So I think it depends on the sense of urgency in the situation. But I do believe, I think I see everything as a coaching moment. Everything is a coaching opportunity to learn, to get better, not for yourself, not just for yourself, but for the other person as well. So it helps us as leaders be better leaders. And it also helps the other person understand how to step up so that they can in turn become a leader as well.
Well, first of all, Dr. Hughes, I just love the fact that you used the word shenanigan because I actually used that word this morning with my 9-year-old. Actually, he's 10 now, but anyhow, I'd go back to something I said just a moment ago that you have to build buffer or bandwidth into your schedule every day so that you can deal with emergencies, so you can deal with the things you need to do as mundane as getting a drink of water, going to the restroom, eating even. I used to, when I worked as a CFO, I used to schedule on my calendar, I'm going to lunch. And that was like sacred for me. I'm going to lunch. Even if all I did was step outside the building and eat a sandwich standing in the grass, I was going to lunch. So I would say for you or any other leader that's struggling with these ideas, it's up to you to build that bandwidth. It's up to you to sit down with your assistant or whomever's controlling your life with you and saying, listen, I need your help. This is not good for my organization. It's not good for us as a team. It's not good for me individually to be constantly chasing after the calendar date. And so I would say it's really something that we have to manage. It's called time management for a reason. And so anyhow, that it's hard. Trust me, it's hard. I was a CFO with a staff of 25 people, and I dealt with it every day.
This was easier when I had a staff of 12. Now when you have a staff of 65 people.
I know. I know, because they all have needs and demands, and they want to deal with it through you.
Ooh, the boss,
Right.
yeah.
So, are there benefits to procrastination? If that's still the right term to use in this conversation.
I don't like the term procrastination. I just don't like it because it connotes a bad thing. And again, as I said at the opening of this, I don't think the author is really talking about procrastination.
And you think that he's talking more about time management?
No, well, yes, but no, I think what he's talking about is building bandwidth or space to be quiet so you can create things. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what really fuels creativity, is the ability to rest oneself mentally or space-wise. I operate in a weird way. I can go sit at Starbucks, put my earbuds in like I've got right now, listen to some sort of music and write. And there's all sorts of stuff going on around me. Some people need quiet. You need to build that space that works for you.
I agree. When I read the article, I got something totally different. I don't think and maybe his intent was there, but I don't think he's really talking about procrastinating at all, especially when I look at some of the examples. I think it's a matter of time management and building in, like Dr. Foster said, that bandwidth, that quiet, that space, that time to be able to be creative and focused. But when we start talking about creativity, people glean creativity from a lot of different places. For me, I'm a creative person, and I get creativity from everything from sound. Like, absolute silence doesn't work for me. Now, if I'm working on something that doesn't require creativity, like I'm grading or I'm doing something that's very analytical, I need silence because it's a different side of my mind that's working. But when I'm talking about being creative, I'm out in nature. I'm at the beach. I'm at the park. I may even go to the mall, which I don't do malls. But if I'm looking for creativity, I'm looking for a specific type of something that's going to jar that creative mind on what I'm working on. I'm going to that environment. So I may need, and for me, I may be listening to a certain type of music, or it just really depends. So I think the article is more about creativity and finding that space, that time, that whatever that ignites that creative genius within you. And sometimes it means changing something at the last minute, which is what one of his examples was. And that's okay, because right before that pivotal moment where you're exercising whatever it is you're working on, you may have a creative genius moment that says, this is not a good fit, I'm going to change this, and that will just kind of take it to the next level, whatever it is you're working on. So I really think the article isn't really talking so much about procrastination so much as it is tapping into the creative genius and the different elements and different things that comes along with it.
As leaders, we have to remember that everybody has a different sense of what is creative, right, and how to pull out your creativity. I agree with Dr. Hughes. I can't sit in silence and be creative. I'm a social butterfly anyway, so I need to be around people. I like bright colors. In our organization, we have a creative room filled with water fountains and sounds and bright colors to stimulate the mind. So it just depends on the type of person and what stimulates their creativity. If it's something analytical, then I need complete silence, whether it's writing a white paper or something in nature to that, or listening to music actually helps me write papers as well, like worship music. So it just depends on the person. It's not a one fit all kind of situation. And as leaders, you need to grasp what makes your people creative and throw out different options, because people are not going to be the same as you, and we can't expect them to as leaders. So we need to present options for them to stimulate creativity. Some might call that procrastination, when other people call that meditating. And so we have to be careful at the way we define terms too. And I agree with you, Dr. Hughes. I don't know if the article was, I don't think it was so much procrastination, but what type of venues or filters do people use to stimulate that creativity? I might think sitting in a room listening to procrastination, while some other person might think they're being artsy. So it just depends on what we define procrastination and creativity as. The two can get confusing sometimes. So
not
just caring and not doing anything and just sit, sitting there saying, I'm just not going to do that task. I know I have to get it done, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wait another 5 or 7 hours.
I think you both raised some really good points. And if we move into that idea of the space we work in, there's been in the last 5 or so years, this rise of the idea of the open office space. It kind of looks like, William, maybe you work in that type of environment where it's a little more open, because I could see like a cubicle wall behind you. My point, though, is that the problem with an open office system has been the complaint about noise and distraction. So you're dealing with a subset of people that may be more of a visual learner, and they're stimulated by visual things rather than auditory learning. And so they need to be stimulated through auditory means. And so the open system, the open office, has not been successful because it's a one size fits all. And as Dr. Bolzer was saying, some people learn this way, some people learn another way, some people need quiet, some people need noise or some sort of stimulation that's going on. But Wanda, who's a guest in our room right now, she even brought up this issue about what about energy? What about energy levels? A lot of organizations are saying are putting into their medical and health benefits this idea of exercise. Now, the exercise could be in the way of a gym membership. Maybe the organization has a gym in the building or in the office, or maybe they just offer a room where you can go and jump rope, skip, run on the treadmill, whatever. I've even seen organizations where they have ping pong tables and video games. So this is all about stimulating the employees' creativity, but also giving them that bandwidth of rest to create peace. Some of the best ideas I've ever had is because I'm like, I need to take a break. And I'll walk into the other room and lay on the couch and I close my eyes, but I'm not sleeping. I'm actually just kind of breathing and being in the moment and maybe praying. And then the ideas start flowing. And then I get up and run here to this desk.
Yeah, I think, I was going to ask the question, when are you in your creative zone? And each of you have answered that. And I think for me, I've learned that my creative zone is when I've thought through a problem and come to my own conclusions, and I have a chance to navigate that with other people who are sharing their perspective. And sometimes, my idea is best, and other times others' ideas are best. But what I've also found too is that my creative flow comes when there's a merge between my idea and the ideas of others. It represents all of our contributions. It's what others in the industry may call inclusive leadership, where you're taking a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and you're creating this new creation that represents all of the ideas that everyone is bringing to the table. It looks like someone, Medtronica, said that the article seems to outline the idea of letting people be who they are to get things done. The idea of deadlines does not yield the best results. What's your reaction to that? Deadlines do not yield the best results.
Well, go ahead, Doc.
I think it depends on the situation. Right now, I have 2 team members who are doctors trying to get us an accreditation for a medical program at the university. And I'm all, let's set a deadline to make sure the goals get met. And I can tell that they were getting a little anxious by the deadlines that I set. And so I took a step back throughout the day, and I was like, okay, why are they so anxious about the deadlines that I set? And as a leader, we have to take a step back sometimes and realize sometimes we can pressure other people and make the situation more anxious than when it really needs to be. Even though I work with the deadlines doesn't mean that my colleagues do. And so we tried it. We tried to take away the deadlines, and it worked. It worked. Actually, they got the project done before the deadline. Now, I'm not saying I can do that with every team member. I'm just saying with these team members, that seemed to work the best. And I think as leaders, sometimes we need to reevaluate. Everyone doesn't work the same. So I can agree. I can relate to that sometimes deadlines don't always produce the best work, but I think that's up to the leader. I don't think that should be like a general statement. Seeing that there's no need for deadlines, because that can create a situation of chaos in itself. So we got to be very careful when we talk about completely getting rid of deadlines. But I think in some situations, deadlines aren't needed, especially if you have team members who have shown a pattern of getting things done. And abide by the boundaries, I think that could be a situation where you might not need a deadline. But again, that depends on the leader, the project, the organization. A lot plays into that decision.
Right. I agree with what you said, Dr. Bozer. One of the things that I put in the chat is about speaking the language of the people on your team. This is why it's important to get to know the members on your team, to know what's going to work for them best. Some people work better under deadlines. If you give them a schedule, you tell them what you want when it's due, they're great at it. Others need a little bit more autonomy. They need a little bit more space because anxiety sets. It's just like people who take tests. Some people are very stressed and they don't do well on tests because of the time. It's not because they don't know the information. It's not because they can't do it, but that ticker, something about that clock is stressful and it creates anxiety. So it's, as a leader, it's your responsibility, it's your role to know your people, know their strengths as well as their weaknesses, so that you can use both of them to their advantage to show them this may be your weakness. This may be an area where you need some growth. However, we're going to use your strength to help you grow in this particular area over here. So it's understanding the language that works for them. Some people may not like the term deadline, although they work better under a deadline. So what is the word that makes them feel comfortable, when it comes to that particular situation? So it's important, but it still boils down to you as the leader. Going back to something I said earlier in the discussion is, how much time are you willing to put into your people? Mm-hmm. What is the effort and the energy you're willing to put into your people to help them grow, to help them be better, to help them be creative, to help them to achieve the shared goal of the organization or the project or whatever it is you're working on?
Yeah, I personally don't like the word deadline because of the word dead in it. But it was more of a play on it. But my thinking is this: we do have hard goals, hard deadlines, if you want to use the word deadline. We do have stakes in the ground that we have to achieve. For example, accreditation in a university, there's no forgiveness for being late. There's none. And I know I've worked in a university. So we do have events on our timeline, if you will, that it's a do or die, if you will, the deadline. So I do think that as leaders, what we really come back to is, how do we as a group set the goal, set the objectives, and continually communicate along the way, and oh, by the way, ask for help where needed. How do we model that? How do we coach and mentor that into our team from the very beginning? And I think, Dr. Hughes said it earlier, maybe Dr. Bolzer, you got to speak the language of the team. You got to know what they're saying, but also you have to empower them. And this is really where team cohesiveness comes in. And so, I don't know. I don't like the idea of deadlines. I do like the idea of saying we have some goals, we have some objectives. But then there's also that, what do we do with disruptions along the way? And that's where we build in that capacity for disruption.
Yep. So we've come to the end of our time together, but before we go, wanted to give each of you an opportunity to submit your shameless plugs and projects you're working on right now that you think the public will benefit from knowing. So we'll start with you, Karen. What are you working on?
Please start with me.
Hey, you were late, buddy.
Last in.
First out. We're on a LIFO system here.
Yeah, last in, first out.
LIFO. We heard you were procrastinating, Karen.
That did not come from me, Karen.
You guys to give me a hard time.
It did not come from me.
Okay, well, some projects that I'm working on is I'm working on another book, The Heart of Leadership. I also have a book out right now called The Christian Millennial, Leading in a Secular World. You can buy the book on Amazon or Tate Publishing or Barnes & Nobles. It's a read for all generations, and it's a really good book. So please check that out. And I am working with Dr. Clark on a project. I think we're still waiting to hear back of what's going on with our book proposal.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a website out, and I will post it on here. As soon as we're done.
Awesome. LaTanya?
I got a couple of things. I'm pretty excited. I do have a book out. It's called Pillars for Christian Mentoring. I just had a book signing in South Carolina last week. About that, was able to really kind of touch bases with some other local authors at the same time. And I'm back home in Florida, getting ready to set up a couple more book signings. So you can find my book on Amazon. It's available in Barnes and Noble as well. It's at the Lighthouse Christian Bookstore in Conway, South Carolina. I submitted a chapter for a peer-reviewed book that's coming out in June on ethics of learning. Basically, it's leadership ethics, learning about codes of ethics from different biblical people. So I wrote on Samson and understanding how God treats you as a leader, even when you're disobedient. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm working on outlining my follow-up book, Two Pillars for Christian Mentoring, and dealing with why women should be mentors. And then I have a whole series coming along dealing with the arts and entertainment community for mentoring, why it's necessary there, as well as in the area of government and education. So got a couple things working, and I'm pretty excited. So stay tuned. See me around
Awesome.
somewhere.
Wow, that's awesome. I actually have a lot of things going on as well. I have two books out. One is Organization 3.0, which can be found on Amazon, and I posted the link in the chat box on the side there. And also, I have a book out, a newer book called The Open Organization. And you can find that on Amazon, or you can go to Routledge.com, who's my publisher, and get a copy. That is a technical book, so it's going to be a little more on the pricey side, but well worth the read. I also just became an ambassador for the Red Hat Corporation. Jim Whitehurst wrote a book called The Open Organization as well, and so I'm an ambassador for Open Organization and opensource.com, and so that's really exciting. I'm in the process of writing my third book, title not to be disclosed as of yet because it's working condition. And finally, in May, it looks like I may be heading to Egypt to do some government symposiums for the Middle East. And so I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. As you guys know, I've done Leadership in Your Local Church, a mini book series, and I have one out on nonprofits, working on one for personal leadership. I'm also in the middle of writing an article on inclusive leadership through the lens of collaborative structure. So that's been an interesting process to kind of explore what inclusive leadership looks like and how it's fostered and bred. The other project I'm working on is the launch of Eli Patrick and Company. It is a consulting company focused on change management, personal growth, and leadership development. So more on that will be coming in the future months, and I'm excited to see that come to fruition.
Awesome.
All righty, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to my friends who contributed to the topic today. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Leadership Conversations. See you guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.